Why don't you just introduce yourself and then tell us your NF journey?
My name is Kathyrn. My maiden name was Zerkes. So we have been around with the NF walk as long as I can remember. I think we started with the Naperville walk on walk number 3. So we've been around since almost the beginning. I was diagnosed with NF at age of 3. I was the only one in my family to have it. So I was that spontaneous mutation. So it was not very well known back in the 80s. So my mom was very blindsided. I didn't start really getting fibromas or little tumors until puberty, which is your typical first hormone change. So that spiked my first growth. And then any pregnancy after that, I had lots and lots of growth. So that was very hard.
That's interesting. So every time you got pregnant, you got more fibromas.
Correct. Like tons of them. I'm talking like not just like 5, 6, I'm talking like hundreds.
Wow.
Surrounding my entire back, my stomach, my chest. It was not fun. We're probably done with kids now that we have a boy and a girl.
And then I know with a parent that has NF, then your children have a 50-50 chance. And
Correct.
do your children have NF or you don't know?
So our daughter was tested and she came back negative for NF. My son, within a week of him being born, we knew he had NF. He started getting the cafe spots and he was diagnosed actually on Friday with NF type 1 and he's 6 months old.
Wow, that's young.
And he has the visual symptoms of NF already just by looking at the amount of cafe au lait spots he has, how big some of them are. So he meets that criteria of having 6 or more within a certain radius and a certain diameter.
You guys fit the statistic. It's 50-50. That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things have you experienced with NF? Like, what have been some of your symptoms and disability?
I would say my biggest symptom is probably just more the neurofibromas and the cafe au lait spots. You know, I didn't have any internal tumors or anything like that. So I have tons of the freckling. I also have a lot of the freckling in the armpits, the groin area, the back of the neck. So like if you know your statistics, they have that. Like it's not even the cafe au lait spots, it's literally like microscopic dots of like tons of freckling. I had a venous malformation on my face, which was the scarring on my lip. I had that removed when I was probably 6. And I actually went through a malpractice lawsuit with the doctor. He screwed up the surgery and I ended up having to have 6 reconstructive surgeries every year from age 6 to about 12 until they fixed the error of the doctor. So that was super traumatizing as a child.
Oh my God.
I've had 2 tumor removals. I had one that lined up with my bra line that was quite large, and it hurt every time I wore a bra because it was right on the band of the bra. So they removed that tumor for me. And I had a plexiform tumor in the bend of my arm that was also removed. So that happened at the same time I did the tumor on my bra line. And that was probably when I was in my 20s, to be honest. And I was hesitant to even trust another plastic surgeon because of some of the trauma that I went through when as a child.
I bet. Were you bullied in school at all? I feel like, especially if something's like visible on your face.
I had some kids that picked on me because of my lip, you know, just a little group of boys. But for the most part, my parents did such a good job of making me not be scared of my body and not be scared or ashamed of like NF. So I knew exactly what I had. And I just most of the part told people, oh, I have NF, you know, not a big deal. And I had a really good group of like girlfriends from kindergarten all the way through high school that my self-confidence was really high, I guess you could say. So I never struggled with like depression. I wasn't ever ashamed to be in a bathing suit. I would say that maybe happened a little more in like college. It was more because I got into more dating and then like, you know, physical touch happens a little more the older you get with gentlemen. And that was probably more a little self-consciousness, but the bullying wasn't too bad. But we also didn't have internet when I was a kid and we didn't have phones when I was a kid. So if I got bullied, it was a couple hours a day at school. And then I came home to like a super loving family and friends that I had an escape from that reality, which kids don't have nowadays.
Yeah, that's very true. With your son being diagnosed, how are you feeling about that?
When I first found out he had it, I felt completely shamed and guilty that I had a second child because our daughter came back and she didn't have NF. And I was like, well, maybe we should have just had the one kid then, because now I passed this on. It's my fault. Like I'm the reason he might be sick, and we don't know what it's going to look like because NF has so many different spectrums in a way. It's not a spectrum disorder, but it's like a spectrum to the point where it can be so mild, unseen, unknown that you have something to so severe that it's like, oh my God, there's something like physically wrong with this child, like, or this adult. So it makes me feel ashamed at times to think that I'm the reason he might fight and have health issues and struggle and might get bullied. So I am kind of battling that currently. But like my husband keeps telling me it's not my fault. So
I mean, yeah, it's not like you had a choice. Even if he has the worst part of NF, like it's still a life worth living.
yes.
Would you say that there's anything you gained from having NF?
I think it made me more compassionate as a person because I don't think I ever bullied a person. I was very good to not judge someone when I saw someone with a disability or a disorder. So I think that brought awareness to me just because when we did go to walks, I would see people that were more severe and more, disfigured possibly. And my parents have always taught us, like, we don't ever judge someone. We don't ever make fun of someone. We don't know what they have or what they're going on with. So I think I had that perspective. I don't know what kind of person I would be if I wasn't so aware of disabilities and differences.
Yeah, that's very true. So what has NF Midwest, the organization, meant to you?
I mean, I miss it because we live in Georgia now and there is nothing out here for NF. Like doctors don't even know about it. I can't even get a doctor in the state of Georgia that will see me for NF. I actually have to go to Alabama because there is no NF specialist or doctors in the entire state of Georgia. I kid you not. Like I would have to go to Birmingham, Alabama, which isn't horrible. It's not a far drive because we actually live like 30 minutes from the Alabama border. But still, just like it blows my mind that we're in 2021. I mean, I was born in the 80s and I'm not the first person to have this disorder, that we don't have an NF clinic for adults here. And then it makes me mad to think that when my son turns 21, his NF doctors are going to refuse to work with him and see him because they don't see anyone past the age of 21. And that's a courtesy, they said, because technically 18 is when they should stop. But it mind blows me. I'm hoping in another 20 years that'll be different.
Yeah, hopefully, for sure.
But they're not as well as established here as the Midwest. The NF walk is very boring here. It is literally just a walk. It's a group of people that get together. There's no raffles. There's no prizes. There's no characters running around giving hugs and taking pictures. There's no face painting. Like there's no bouncy houses. It literally is a group of adults. And when we showed up, no one even like said hi to us. Like everyone was just like in their own little cluster or group. And then someone came on, announced the walk was going to start. They walked around the park and then ended it. There was a little free food, but that was it.
Wow.
I'm hoping to establish something like the NF walk we have in Naperville and in the Midwest area and bring it down to the South.
That would be amazing. And clearly there's like a void. Do you have any advice for people that are just newcomers into this world?
Just definitely like what my parents' perspective was, is to very much embrace NF, not to be ashamed of it. If someone asks, like, my tumors are getting bigger, like my little fibromas are bigger because of my pregnancy. So like now kids at like where I work will point to it and ask what it is. And instead of just saying, oh, it's a mole or it's a birthmark, I kind of tell them like, oh, it's a little fatty tumor. And then like sometimes the kids will hear the word tumor and like be able to be like, oh, are you sick? Be like, no, not really. So I think it's just a matter of like educating people, continue to embrace it. Don't be ever ashamed of who you are. I know a long time ago, we used to have little cards that we could pass out that says, hey, I saw you staring at me. Let me tell you about myself. I have NF. And here's some facts about NF. It was like a little business card. Just continue to educate people and spread awareness. Never to be ashamed of it.
Is there anything that you want to add?
The only other thing is A lot of people who have NF have learning disabilities, so don't ever be afraid to get your kid an IEP, special education like services set up, because that can really make a difference if they're going to thrive in school. So I think just be mindful that a lot of times a learning disability will coincide with an NF disorder. And I think there's stigma still attached to, oh, you're in special education, you have an IEP, but embrace it, because that will give your child more confidence, will give them the tools they need to be successful in school. And you can have an F and a learning disability and be extremely successful. I was diagnosed with a learning disability. I had an IEP. I had an IEP in college. I went on, I got my master's degree. I graduated with honors. I am a licensed mental health professional. You can be successful and still have NF. And that's something I like to people to know. Like, even though I have a learning disability, I still completed my master's program with honors.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's like every parent's fear, right? You just want to make sure that they can still live a normal life. And you're just like living proof that.
Yes, I'm married. I have children. I have a job. And there's partners out there that are understanding of NF. Like, my husband has never made me feel ashamed to have NF. Like, he never made me feel guilty when we found out our son had NF. I've never felt ashamed to be, exposed around him, like to see me in my most vulnerable states, so even if I talked about removing them, he's like, I don't mind them. Why go through the pain of removing the tumors? You don't need them removed.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time and sharing your story.
Yes, thank you.